These notes are on OilPastel Techniques. Oil pastels can be very messy. These are them. These are what they look like. They're basically oil paints, but in a little bar, so you're actually drawing instead of painting with them. So they're an oil base, so they're not easy to clean out of clothes, so be careful with them. Okay, let's get started on some techniques of mark making. The first type of mark making would be just a solid color. You just take a color, and you can put it on fairly lightly, or you can color heavier. Basically like coloring, like filling it in the space. So you can either do it light or heavy. It's up to you how thick you want it. Another type of mark making is called scumble. Scumble is basically like scribbling. So just kind of scribble. The more you layer your scribbling, the darker it gets, the farther out, spread out it gets, the lighter it gets. You need some white in there. It kind of creates a different texture. The next kind of technique, or mark making, is hatching. Just like with the pencil or the pen, you can also hatch with this. So just make your lines. The closer they get, the darker it gets. The farther apart they are, the lighter it gets. You could even do cross hatching if you want. Now, when I do my hatching and cross hatching, I don't worry about them being perfectly parallel. If they kind of touch, that's fine. The main idea is that you're drawing lines. So that's hatching. Then you have pointillism. Pointillism, think of the word point, bunch of dots. So just kind of make some dots. Don't have to be lifting your hand way up here to make dots. You know, you can just kind of let it pick up and drop down. The closer, the darker it gets, the farther apart they get, the lighter it gets. And you can always mix colors doing this. So I use green, so maybe I'll add some blue, so that visually my eye will mix those together and I get a blue-green. Okay, so that's pointillism. Those are some ways to make marks in oil pastel. Next, we need to know how to blend. Now, actually, sorry, we're going to do one more kind of mark making, and that's scratching. You can remove some of the oil pastel by scratching. So I'm going to put some oil pastel down. Fairly heavily. And I think I put some black in the top of that in some areas. Not in the entire thing. And then I'm going to take this needle tool and I'm going to scratch into it a little bit. You can see where I scratch the black off, it comes out orange. And then I'm going to clean off my tool with the paper towel so that I don't pick up the other color too much. And if I scratch in the orange, then it turns to white. Now we'll go on to blending. So So this is still OilPastel Techniques. This time it is blending. Okay, so blending techniques. The first one we're going to do is mix white on top. Okay, so I'm going to take a color, put my blue on, I'm going to grab a violet, put it next to it, and I'm going to grab the white and let those two just kind of mix. So I get kind of a blue-violet. Now, I've got blue on my white pastel. So I need to wipe that off with a paper towel, because if I go to use this white again, but in a different color, it's going to mess up my other color. So I got to make sure I get that cleaned off. And I don't want to leave it sitting on there because it could dry on there, and then it's harder to clean off. So that's mixed white on top. My next technique is to layer for blending, to do layers. So I'm going to grab my blue again. I'm going to put it down first. I'm not going to go real heavy with this because it'll be able to mix. I can always add more since I'm layering to mix it. I'm going to put my violet right on top, and they mix fairly well. So this one I'm going to keep adding my violet. Okay, now if it's getting too dark, okay, I've got some blue on there I got to clean off with the paper towel. I'm going to go back to my blue and mix it a little more. It depends on how much of a blue-violet you want. Do you want more blue? Do you want more violet? What do you want to end up with? That's layering. You can also blend with your fingers. So, again, I'm going to have that blue and violet. So I'm going to take my blue, put it down, take my violet, put it over here, and just use my finger to smear it together. Now my finger is going to get messy, so I'm going to have to clean my finger, and I got to make sure my oil pastels aren't mixing color, don't have any color left on them that isn't supposed to be there. So I just kind of wipe my fingers a little bit so I don't get fingerprints elsewhere from that color. Now you're going to end up with these little things, like little bits coming off. You can kind of just touch them and pick them up if they aren't stuck down. Just be careful not to smear them, because that'll be a mark in your paper then. And you'll have to make it part of your design then. The next thing is a paper towel for blending. Same basic idea as fingers, but instead it's just a little less messy on your fingers. So I got my blue, my violet, and a little bit of blue got on my violet, so I'm going to clean it off. Grab a little piece of paper towel, mix it together a little bit. Then we have the blending stump. So just like pencils, you can use the blending stump. So again, I'm going to put my blue down and my violet. Clean off my violet again because I keep getting it in the blue. Now I'm going to grab my blending stump. They come in a few different sizes. I'm going to use the small one. And I'm just going to go across right there, let them mix. Use the blending stump to mix. Then to clean this off, clean the blending stump off, I grab the sandpaper and just kind of roll it across the sandpaper. I want to keep that point to the tip of the blending stump so that it mixes better. It works a little better, so I'm kind of keeping it at that angle and rolling it across. I don't want to have a flat spot, so I'm kind of turning it as I move it. Okay, that's blending stump. The last technique for blending is we're going to use oil on a Q-tip. So, again, I'm just for doing this fairly easily, I'm just going to keep with my blue and violet. You can change colors if you want. Make sure they're colors that mix. So, got my blue and my violet. I put it on fairly heavily because it tends to get a little bit thinner with the oil. I have a little cup of oil. It doesn't take much oil for this, so just a little bit. I'm going to take a Q-tip and just dip it a little bit into the oil. I don't need to soak the whole thing. And I can run it across to mix it. I could also, not too much, pick up some of that and almost paint with it with the Q-tip. Use some of that color that's on there. Have a little fun with that. It's more mark making, but you can still do that. Okay? And that's it for OilPastel Techniques.